Oh, yeah.
Hello, podcast family. This is your unoriginal host, Afton J, and I'm happy to be hanging out with you wherever you are today. Let's get into the intellectual journey that we're about to go on together. As always, none of what we'll talk about today is my original thoughts, but I will attempt to repackage other people's original ideas and talk through them so we can learn and laugh together. I'm going to try to bring you the most interesting, useless knowledge in the most thought-provoking and entertaining way I know how. Okay, let's do this. Today's episode is God bless you. Achoo! God bless you. Gesundheit. Socially, it's polite to say something like this after someone sneezes. But why do we do it? Before this podcast, I would have never thought twice about why I do it or how the saying came to be. I've just always been taught it's the polite thing to do. But we don't say something after someone coughs or yawns. So why do we feel it's polite to say something after someone sneezes? And why bless you? Even people who are not religious say this phrase just because it's so common. Are we all just very polite? Or are we sheep following a societal norm we don't even understand? Dr. Gail Seltz, an associate professor of psychiatry at Weill Cornell Medicine, stated, for many people, saying bless you is a response that's been conditioned into them. This blew my mind. I've never thought about it like that before. In this episode, we'll explore this and more mind-blowing, useless facts. So let's go. So where does God bless you come from? It's time for our favorite game, What the Idiom? Let's start with our first unsuspecting friend.
What do you say when someone sneezes?
Bless you.
Why do you say bless you when someone sneezes?
I don't know. I guess that's what I just always heard when I was growing up.
I think it's like it's one of those weird old superstitions. Like, if supposedly if you sneezed, it meant that, like, I don't know, you're like summoning the devil or something, which is why they're supposed to say God bless you, which is so weird. Like, it makes no sense. I always say, whenever I sneeze, I always say excuse me. And same thing with I yawn. Like, I always try to say excuse me because it's like a weird biological thing that you're now forcing upon the people around you.
This is such a thought out answer.
I had heard that the reason behind God bless you was that there was a belief back in the Middle Ages that when you sneezed, your soul left your body, and so you were open to, possible demonic possession, and so people would say God bless you to protect you when you sneeze. That's where it came from. What I say is I don't say God bless you. I just say bless you, and it is entirely cultural and all about manners. I was taught that it was polite to say bless you when someone sneezes. And even though I am a priest in the Episcopal Church, when I say bless you to somebody, it has absolutely nothing to do with God. It's all about it's a polite thing to do.
I prefer Gesundheit because that means health in German.
I am shocked that you know that. Most people don't know what that means.
Gesundheit, health.
Where do you think the saying God bless you originally comes from?
So I heard it was that back in the day, people thought that sneezing was your soul trying to escape or something, or like your sickness trying to escape or something like that.
Yeah, so do you think that you need to say God bless you to, like, keep your evilness or your soul or your sickness inside?
Well, when you say it like that, kind of.
Keep your stuff to yourself. God bless you.
God bless you. Oh, I actually think I know that one.
Do you? Go ahead. What do you think it is?
I do. Okay, so I think that was like the plagues and the illness area of, like, time where people had, like, yellow fever, scarlet fever, or whatever it was, and, like, plague doctors were in play, and so when people would, like, cough or sneeze, they immediately thought that they were sick and going to die, so they would say God bless you, and they'd run the other direction because they wouldn't want to get infected.
Are you looking these up? Are you looking these up?
Our unsuspecting friends gave us some of the most common origins behind the phrase. What do you say? Are you a bless you person or a Gesundheit one? Have you never really put much thought into it, or did you already know about it, like our smarty pants friend, who I still can't figure out if she's cheating or a secret genius? Anyway, let's get into the history behind this intriguing saying. There are several different types of idioms, phrases, prose, proverbs, and sayings that we'll talk about on this show. And I will always try to be correct in my terminology. But for all of you English and language masters out there, feel free to correct me or pardon me if I'm not always 100% right. The term, God bless you, is an idiom. Merriam-Webster defines an idiom as an expression in the usage of a language that is particular to itself, having a meaning that cannot be derived from the conjoined meanings of its elements. Whew. Simply put, an idiom is a phrase used commonly in a language or culture that means something different from how it literally sounds. Examples: not my circus, not my monkeys, straight from the horse's mouth, etc. Shameless plug, we'll be talking about these and others in future episodes, so tune in. There are several theories on where the phrase God bless you comes from. The most popular theory is that it originated in Rome when the bubonic plague was raging through Europe. One of the symptoms of the plague was coughing and sneezing, and it's believed that Pope Gregory I, or Gregory the Great, commanded followers to say, God bless you, after a person sneezed in hopes that this prayer would protect them from an otherwise certain death. The Roman physician Galen coined the term, quote, plague to describe any quickly spreading fatal disease. Epidemics of all kinds have been described as plagues, but the bubonic plague is a very specific disease that first spread around the world in the 1300s. It was called the Black Death because it swept across Europe between 1347 and 1351. It took about 4 years to cross from Central Asia to Europe, through the Middle East, and finally to Africa. Europe lost 2/3 of its population, or around 25 million people. The problem was that no one knew how this disease was spread or how to stop it. Medical advice at the time was to leave the infected area and go as far away as possible and don't come back until people stop dying. The disease started with the appearance of buboes, which is swelling, in the groin, neck, and armpits that were painful and secreted blood, hence the name bubonic plague. Between 60% and 90% of people died within 2 to 7 days of being infected. The Black Death was considered the first wave. However, the plague actually lasted from the 1300s to the 1900s. People in the 1300s did not understand what was causing the illness or how it was spread. Some people believed it was a punishment from God. Some believed that foreigners or those who followed a different religion had poisoned the wells. Some thought that bad air was responsible. Some thought the position of the planets had caused the plague. Actually, the Black Death was spread by fleas that bite their hosts, usually coming from rats and other humans, and they introduce bacteria that will cause the disease into the host body. That's why it's uncommon to get the bubonic plague in modern times. In the medical field, a lot has changed since the 1300s. Medicine and medical study at the time was completely lacking in basic understanding of science and the human body. People were nowhere near well equipped enough to handle something as catastrophic and significant as the plague. The Black Death affected medicine and medical practices by causing a shift in the overall focus of the medical and scientific fields. Here are some interesting facts you may not have known. Medicine during the Middle Ages was conducted by a wide variety of practitioners, ranging from herbalists to conjurers to university-trained physicians. Medicine and religion were very closely tied, and many physicians would take holy orders of some kind during their professional life. According to The Air of History, Part 2, Medicine in the Middle Ages by Rachel Hajar, MD, if you were a practitioner that learned the practice of medicine rooted in the Greek tradition, you believed in Humourism. And no, that doesn't mean funny medicine. Humourism was prevalent in medicine for centuries. It originated around 500 BC in many of the first recorded human civilizations, and it finally dissipated roughly around the 17 or 1800s. The basis of medicine during the Black Death was the theory of humors, which is based on the idea that the earth is composed of 4 elements: earth, water, fire, and air. Each element is linked to a bodily fluid, and each fluid assumes qualities of the elements. People believed that an imbalance of humors caused disease, and the body could be purged of excess by bleeding, cupping, and leeching. Physicians relied on a combination of crude and unsophisticated techniques such as bloodletting and boil lancing, practices that were extremely dangerous and unsanitary. In the 1300s, the Pope had many advisors. Some were university trained, others were informally trained. He looked at astrologists and a whole host of others to advise him during this hard time. The Pope that sat on the papal throne during the Black Death miraculously did not die of the plague, although 1/3 of his cardinals did. Why? Was it his doctor's advice, or good genes, or was it God's will? It could have been any of these. Let me explain. Clement V was on the papal throne when the Black Death first struck Europe in 1347. He had a huge medical and religious staff at his command. Clement V's physicians advised him that sitting between two roaring fires and shutting himself away would block the plague. The doctors weren't wrong. If you were not around people, you couldn't catch the disease. Also, they thought the fire would kill the, quote, bad air that caused the plague. Turns out rats and fleas, which was the actual cause of the plague, don't like fire either. So when the Pope was in his room surrounded by fire, he was actually safe from the plague, even though the doctors did not know exact reason why. However, against doctors' advice, the Pope eventually did come out of his room to supervise the sick, oversee burials, and provide pastoral care for the dying. So why didn't he catch the plague? Another reason could have been his genes. An article for the National Institute of Health written in 2022 that was titled How the Black Death Shaped Human Evolution, Dr. Hendrik Poyner of the Macaster University in Canada says that the plague changed the course of medical history. It states that when a pandemic of this nature kills 30 to 50% of the population, there is bound to be a selection of protective alleles in humans. Even a slight advantage means the difference between surviving or dying. Of course, those survivors who are of breeding age will pass on their genes. He's talking about a gene variant that was found among plague survivors. These survivors had a gene that was particularly protective. The variant was near the gene ERAP2, and if you had 2 copies of this variant, you were 40% more likely to survive the plague. However, this protection against the plague came at a cost. The protective ERAP2 variant is also known for a risk factor for Crohn's disease, and other protective variants have been associated with an increased risk of 2 other autoimmune diseases. Thus, the Black Death and other past pandemics may have shaped human immune systems in ways both good and bad. While we acquire better protection against infections, we become more susceptible to autoimmune diseases. Another interesting thing that came out of the plague was personal protective equipment. Did you know that the Black Death gave rise to the hazmat suits of today? Medical professionals were starting to observe what was going on around them and what they could do to protect themselves. The bird beak masks were designed in 1619 and worn by doctors in the 17th century to protect themselves while treating patients with the plague. Imagine a doctor wearing a mask like a bird. Go ahead and Google it. It's a fact. These strange and eerie masks had round glass eye openings and fastened straps that help hold the 6-inch beak over the doctor's nose. The beak contained 2 small holes and a type of early stage respirator that contained herbs, spices, viper flesh powder, wormwood, dried flowers, and vinegar sponges. Every bird doctor ensemble was topped with a black, wide-brimmed leather hat, which indicated their profession. The hooded anklet cloaks were made from oiled wax covered in Morocco leather, which was believed to prevent air from getting in the pores. Beneath the cloak, a shirt was tucked into the pants, which were then tucked into leather boots. Completing these outfits were goat leather gloves and a rod, which allowed doctors to communicate to patients, examine them, and sometimes fend off aggressive ones. The invention of the plague doctor costume, completed with the beaked mask, is credited to the French physician Charles de Lamorne. At the time, doctors believed the plague was caused by mysopia, or bad air, and the sense in the nose case was coverings around the body would protect them from getting the disease. The beak shape of the mask was meant to give air sufficient time to be absorbed by the protective herbs before hitting the nostrils and lungs. Plague doctors at this time were required by the contracts they signed with municipal councils to wear the costume. The appearance of one of these human-sized birds on a doorstep could only mean that death was near. Scholars would consider the first modern hazmat suit to be developed during Manchurian plague of 1910 and 1911 by Dr. Wu Li Tin. He developed a gauze mask to protect health workers from fighting the pandemic. People's attitudes towards safety masks drastically changed around this time. And by 1918, when the Spanish flu struck, masks were standard for anyone working around contagious diseases. The Manchurian plague epidemic was the first time in modern history doctors wore protective suits to deal with an intense disease outbreak. Today, there are many definitions of the hazmat suit or hazardous material suit, partially because each suit does different things. In general, hazmat suits are a type of personal protective equipment, or PPE, that protects the wearer's skin and possibly their eyes, nose, and mouth from hazardous materials. That's where the suit gets the HAZMAT name from. I find it super interesting that the requirement for hazmat or protective suit for people working around illnesses was not taken seriously until the 1900s. It's incredible to think that medicine has come so far, and yet we have so much to learn. From fires to humors, fluids to bloodletting, and bird suits, that was an interesting rabbit hole of medical fun facts. Let's get back to the idiom. The Pope and his medical advisors thought that bad air was the cause of the plague, which causes us to say a blessing for people when they sneeze. While this is the most likely source of the saying, let's talk about some of the other reasons people think we say God bless you. Some might tell you that your heart stops when you sneeze. Saying God bless you is a blessing that you don't die. False. The heart does not stop beating when you sneeze. The heart beats due to electrical signals from the sinus node, a small mass of tissue in the heart's upper right chamber or atria. As the University of Arkansas for Medical Science reports, a person's heart does not stop when they sneeze. This is because sneezing does not affect the electrical signals that control the heart rate. When a person sneezes, there's a large change of pressure in the chest and the blood flow to the heart. These sudden dramatic changes can affect heart rate, but the heart does not stop beating. The myth that a person's heart stops when they sneeze may stem from the fact that a sneeze can affect the rhythm of the heartbeat. It just doesn't stop it. If that was not interesting enough, here are some more useless facts about sneezing you can use to impress your friends. What causes a sneeze? It's the body's way of removing a foreign object from the respiratory tract. If the body senses a foreign invader, it will try to expel it. Also, if you have a viral infection, this can make you sneeze as the body tries to fight off the virus. But you probably already knew these reasons. How about these ones? Fear causes nasal membranes to shrink, and this can make you sneeze. Other emotions like frustration, resentment, sadness, or anguish can cause the nasal membranes to swell, which can also trigger a sneeze. The same is true for excitement and joy. Plucking your eyebrows can cause sensitive nerve endings in your face to engage the sneeze reflex. Working out or overexertion can irritate the nostrils and boom, achoo! After sex, sneezing can be a response to orgasm. Ooh, achoo! And finally, bright lights. This can happen in people with a phonetic light reflex. It's called the Achooo syndrome. No, but seriously, it sounds like a bad joke, but I'm not kidding. The Achooo syndrome, or the autosomal dominant compelling helioosmotic outburst syndrome. Okay, I'm not a medical doctor, and I apologize for that horrible oration of the syndrome name, but we press on. It is a genetic trait that causes people to sneeze in response to bright lights, such as the sun. It can be passed down within families. If one parent has the condition, there is a 50% chance of the child having the condition as well. It is estimated that 18 to 35% of the general population has this trait, or approximately 1 in every 3 people. This fact blew my mind. I've always been told to look at a bright light when I sneeze, but I never knew why it worked for me. I had the Achooo syndrome all along. This might be one of my new favorite fun facts. Here are some final fun facts about the sneeze. You don't sneeze when you're asleep because the nerves that trigger sneezing are also sleeping. Once a sneeze starts, you can't stop it. A single sneeze can travel up to 100 miles per hour. Now that's a fast sneeze. A sneeze can produce up to 40,000 droplets. Ew. And finally, a sneeze has a spray radius of up to 5 feet. Also, ew. Okay, that was some very interesting, useless knowledge. We have so far covered everything from Gregory the Great to the Black Death, the Achooo syndrome, and the spray radius of sneezes. Another possible theory is that the expression may have originated from superstition. Some people believe that the custom of asking for God's blessing began when ancient man thought that the soul was in the form of air and resided in the body's head. A sneeze, therefore, might then actually expel the spirit from the body, unless God blessed you, and prevented this from occurring. Some ancient cultures also thought that sneezing forced evil spirits out of the body, endangering others because these spirits might now enter their bodies. The blessing was bestowed to protect both the person who sneezed and the others around them. These superstitions are not just common to the Christian culture, but other cultures as well. Ancient Egyptians, Christians, Indians, and many other people have thought that sneezing was linked to evil spirits. Webster's dictionary defines superstition as a belief or practice resulting from ignorance, fear of the unknown, trust in magic or chance, or a false conception of causation. Many cultures could not understand medically why sneezes occur, and even to this day, we cannot explain everything about the sneeze. So, to help explain illnesses and sneezing, many superstitions have been created throughout time. Romans perceived the sneeze as a dangerous symptom and responded, "Jupiter preserve you," which was later changed to "God bless you" by Pope Gregory, as we talked about earlier. So now you see that while the Black Death was the most likely source of the idiom, it potentially comes from another saying that goes even farther back in history. Hindus believe sneezing represented the escape of evil spirits from the mouth. Innocent bystanders responded "live" in Hindu, and the sneezer evoked a blessing and snapped his fingers to prevent the unleashed demons from leaping down the innocent's throat. The ancient Greeks and Egyptians believed sneezing was a sign of the gods revealing the future. A sneeze could either be a good omen or a bad omen, bringing good luck or misfortune. In some religions, sneezing can be linked to evil spirits entering the body, which is really creepy to think about. Evil spirits and death are such a mystery to most of us. Many of us are scared of doing things that will invite these ghoulish guests into our lives. God bless you is a prime example of one of these superstitions. What else are we doing to keep away paranormal predators?
Do you have any superstitions that have to do with evil spirits, ghosts, or death?
I will not go near a Ouija board, just because like the idea of conjuring a demon and then that potentially like latching onto you and following you around for like the rest of your life, no matter if you move to like a different state or anything like that. I know that is such like a far out there reach, but it's so terrifying that like if people are casually oh, let's pull the Ouija board out. Like, no, I want nothing to do with that. I know you bought it at Target. I know it's created in a factory. I'm not superstitious about a lot of things. That's one thing that I won't go near that. Seems any sort of conjuring the dead sort of thing. Like that's terrifying.
So the superstition that I heard is that you have to hold your breath when you drive past a graveyard because there's souls just roaming around trying to find a host to come back to life in. So if you have to hold your breath so you don't inhale a spirit.
Oh, that's so creepy.
Right? It is. And I've done that. I've done that so many times. Like I hold my breath just like, I don't know why. I just do it. I mean, that's the reason why, even though I don't believe that would happen. I'm just like, I don't believe it, but if it is true,
you don't want to inhale a spirit.
Right? I just turn into this old dude. Not my lawn.
I really don't like satanic scary movies. It makes me feel like that energy or that darkness is now in my home. Those movies make me super uncomfortable. I feel like I get anxiety during them. But yeah, I can't do it. I feel so creepy afterwards. Something's following me around the house. I don't like to have the lights off if I'm home alone. Oh, it's such a weird, scary feeling afterwards. So I can't watch movies like that. It freaks me out. It's the creepy. It's awful.
No, absolutely not. Okay, I can't even talk about scary movies anymore. I'm over it.
I know. I'm scared.
If you ever find yourself followed home by a ghost or invaded by an unwelcome spirit, this would be a reason for an exorcism. According to the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops website, an exorcism is a specific form of prayer that the church uses against the power of the devil. Why does the church use them? They say there are instances when a person needs to be protected against the power of the devil or to be withdrawn from a spiritual dominion. At such times, the church asks publicly and authoritatively in the name of Jesus Christ for this protection or liberation through the use of exorcism. There are two different types of exorcisms, the minor and the major. Minor exorcisms are prayers used to break the influence of evil and sin in a person's life, as in preparing for a baptism or when one of the baptized faithful is striving to overcome the influence of evil or sin in their life. While both forms of exorcisms are directed against the power of the devil, the rite of the major exorcism is employed only when there is a case of genuine demonic possession, namely when it is determined that the presence of the devil is in the body of the possessed and the devil is able to exercise dominion over that body. Specialized priests are trained for this specialized ministry through an apprenticeship model, working under the direction of an experienced exorcist. Additionally, in recent years, several programs have been established to foster the training of exorcists. In a 2022 interview by the Columbus Dispatch, Roman Catholic Diocese of Columbus and an Indiana priest, the Reverend Vincent Lampert, who works in the Archdiocese of Indianapolis, says he performs hundreds of exorcisms a year. Lampert began practicing exorcisms in 2005. At that point, there were only around 12 Catholic priests in the United States that were doing the ministry. Today, there are more than 150, he said. The number of priests offering exorcisms has grown because there are more people who believe they're dealing with the demonic, Lampert said. Some of the most famous and puzzling cases have been the stuff of horror movie lovers' nightmares, such as the case with Robbie Mannheim, or more commonly known as Ronald Doe. Ronald Doe's exorcism in the 1940s was one of the most famous exorcisms ever performed. Eventually, this was transformed into Hollywood's box office hit, The Exorcist. To protect the 14-year-old boy's identity, the priest involved in his exorcism referred to him by the pseudonym Ronald Doe. In preparation for her imminent death, Ronald's aunt encouraged him to contact her using a Ouija board post-mortem. After her death, he followed this advice, opening a door to the world of the living for demons who eventually possessed him. During his possession, it was said that numerous religious artifacts flew off the walls, often accompanied by unexplained noises, heavy footsteps, and disconcerting sounds of scratching. Eventually, the possession became so severe that the boy's speech began to change. From his mouth came the language of spoken tongues in a gritty, guttural voice, quite unlike anything Ronald had uttered before. Ronald screamed, cursed, and attacked his exorcist until a, quote, miracle, quote, released him, according to the exorcist. Finally, it led Roland out of this trance-like state. The boy simply stated, "He's gone." This exorcism case inspired the 1971 novel The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty, which turned into an adapted version of the 1973 horror film. The Exorcist franchise has made 8 movies, grossed over $661 million, and sold over 13 million copies. That was just one franchise of movies inspired by this religious ritual. This does not take into account the many other movies, TV shows, and books that have been created on the subject. Once a ritual that was kept secret in the Catholic Church is now becoming more and more common in mainstream society. So is this ritual real or the stuff of superstitions? I'll let you do some more research to decide yourself. But in the meantime, just to be safe, make sure you say God bless you when someone sneezes. Well, useless knowledge family, that is an incredible amount of information and things to ponder. I will leave you here with these intellectual snacks to think about, and you can tell me what you think by leaving us a comment on the podcast or sending us an email to myunoriginalthoughtpodcast@gmail.com. I want to hear from you. What did you like? What do you want to see in the future? Which idiom do you want us to explore next time? If you have any insight on today's topic, something I missed or I didn't get right, or you just want to be featured in a future What the Idiom segment, let me know. This is our show, and I want to interact with you. And as always, like and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss a new episode. That's a wrap for today. Thank you so much for being with us to learn and laugh our way through another unoriginal thought. I'm your host, Afton J, and I thank you for hanging out with me. And as always, keep being inquisitive. I just wanted to let you know that if you couldn't get enough of this episode, we will always have bloopers and interesting conversations included afterwards. Some of this material we didn't have time to get to, or it just didn't have a final place in the edit. But as always, it's thought-provoking or funny or possibly both. If you're interested, just stick around. Bloopers.
Oh, yeah.
Record. Okay. All right. All right.
All right.
Every recording starts out with like at least 30 seconds of giggling that I have to edit out.
That is so you.
You can ask a question like, you gotta give me a second.
You're such a fucking dork.
You're a dork.
I'm just gonna throw this out there that I watched an entire like 26 episode series on the Great Pestilence, is what they called it, or what other people know as the bubonic plague.
Are you bragging about your nerdiness?
I could probably teach a beginner's course on it at this point.
Well, then you should have gotten this answer right. It comes from that.
Well, I didn't
Pope
know
Gregory,
it came from that.
Yeah, Pope Gregory was like, everybody in the congregation will God bless you.
Really? I didn't know that. Knew everything else about it except for that little fact.
You watched a 26 episode like cram fest on the bubonic plague, and this is the one fun fact you missed.
Hello.
Well, hello.
What an unexpected, totally random phone call.
Yes, my unsuspecting friend. Can I ask you some questions? I went a different direction with two of the episodes, and so you're my test bed for the questions, so we'll see how they go. And if they're going to be interesting or not. Because I had some questions and they just like didn't really go over that well. And so I was like, I think I need to redo these.
Okay.
So
I'll be the guinea pig. You can like edit it out if you need to.
So the episode eventually ends up getting into exorcisms. And one of the most famous, so The Exorcist is actually based loosely on one of the famous exorcisms. They came in and and they exorcised him, and then I think that's the term. They exorcised him. They exorcised him.
No, that's right. What was it? I think it's that was The Mask, where he's like, I have exorcised the demons. One of those Jim Carrey movies. Yeah.
He got exorcised, and
I've got like chills from you saying that. Like, oh, that shouldn't. No.
I know. Nope. I had no idea, and that's like where The Exorcist comes from. Like it's just like ugh. Also, when I like researched it, it was like 1 a.m. I was like really into the flow, and I was like, oh yeah, he's gonna get an exorcism, and I literally was like, ... research in the morning, and I like shut the computer. Bro, I won't go near a fucking Ouija board. There's a lot of things I will not go near, and that is definitely one of them. Like you won't catch me in the cemetery at night. Like I don't want to go following me. Like I'm not trying to have it ugh.
If the body senses a foreign invader, it will try to expel it. Also, if you have a viral infection, this can make the sneeze of the body as it sneezes and keeps sneezing. Ronald Doe's exorcism in the 1940s was one of the most famous exorcisms ever performed, eventually transformed into the scariest movie. The minor exorcisms are prayers striving to overcome the influence of evil or sin in her life. Ooh, not just her, but there's like a him too. Freudian slip. A somal dominant helio. Fuck. A somal dominant competing helio a somal dominant competing helio. Oh, we just need one take. We're never gonna get this finished. A somal dominant compelling helio automatic outburst syndrome. Ha! Gotta love those bloopers. That's a wrap. Yep, we're all done here. Oh, wait, were you looking for some more fun facts? Okay, check out the next episode. Press play. Let's go.